We are continuing on with evaluating functions using function arithmetic. In these examples, we're going to specifically be talking about evaluating functions at given x values and using products and division for our function arithmetic. So here we have function f of x equaling x squared minus 3 and g of x equaling 2x plus 1, that whole quantity squared. So just like in the last video with the sums and differences, we are going to be evaluating them individually and then doing the operation on the functions. So this first example, f of 3 times g of negative 2. We need to find f of 3 and g of negative 2 first and then multiply them. So f of 3, we will square x, which in this case is 3, and then subtract 3. So 3 times 3 is 9, minus 3 is 6. Do the same thing with g of negative 2, replacing our x with negative 2, and following order of operations. We do inside the parentheses first, so 2 times negative 2 is negative 4 plus 1 will give us negative 3, right? Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3, and then negative 3 times negative 3 will end up positive 9. Then we need to do the operation that it said. So in this case, the operation is multiply. So we take the answer we got for f of 3, which was 6, and multiply it by the answer of g of negative 2, which is 9, and we get 54 overall. Part B. Now we're finding f of negative 1 and dividing it by g of 4. So first I need to find f of negative 1. Go ahead and grab a different color for a new problem. Alright, f of negative 1. So we're replacing x with negative 1, squaring it, and then subtracting 3. So negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. Minus 3 is negative 2. That's going to be our answer for f of negative 1 in the numerator. Then we need g of 4. 2 times that 4 plus 1, and then square it. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, and 9 times 9 is 81. Oops, 81. Alright, so again, plugging it into g, making sure you recognize the different functions and you're plugging it in the right place, and following order of operations, parentheses, and then within the parentheses we had to multiply then add. Next we go to exponents, so on and so forth, down our order of operations. Alright, this next one says f times g of negative 3. So again, this is the same thing. Let me get a different color here for a new problem. Same thing as f of negative 3 times g of negative 3. So I need to find each one of these evaluated at negative 3 and then doing the operation, which is multiplication. So f of negative 3 first. We're taking negative 3, squaring it, and then subtracting 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 will be a positive 9. Minus 3 is 6. Then we need g of negative 3. G of negative 3 is 2 times that negative 3 plus 1 and then squaring it. 2 times the negative 3 is negative 6 plus 1. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. And lastly, exponent, negative 5 times the negative 5 is a positive 25. And now we need to do that operation. So F times G, we got 6 for F, 25 for G. So overall we'll do 6 times 25. I like to think of that as quarters, right? So how many quarters, or how much do I have if I had 6 quarters? I'd have $1.50. Or 150. Alright, last one in this row. F of negative 5 divided by G of negative 5 is what this says. So it says F divided by G of negative 5, but that's the same thing as if I evaluate it at negative 5, and then evaluate G at negative 5, and then divide. So we need to find each function evaluated at negative 5 first. I'm going to look at F first. Again, division is not commutative. We have to do it in the proper order. So I have to do F divided by G. Plugging in negative 5 for X into F. I get positive 25 minus 3 will give me 22. Right? Just square it and then subtract 3. Do the same thing with G at negative 5. So I have 2 times a negative 5 plus 1, which will be negative 10 plus 1, or negative 9. Right? Negative 10 plus that 1 gets me to negative 9. Square that, I get positive 81. A negative times a negative makes a positive. So I'll have 22 in the numerator and 81 in the denominator. You should always look to see if you can simplify these fractions. In this case, this is 2 times 11. 81 only has 3's. There's nothing here that's going to simplify. Same thing here. Nothing there that will simplify. But you always need to check. Why don't you try the next ones? Alright, let's see how you did. So, first I'm finding F of 4 times G of 3. Alright, so I'm going to start with F of 4. Going back up to my F function, it will be 4 squared minus 3. And 4 squared is 16. 4 times 4 minus 3 gives me 13. G of 3 next. Plugging in 3 for X. 2 times 3 plus 1 squared gives me 6 plus 1, which is 7. 7 squared is 49. So I'm not done yet. I have evaluated both of those, but I have to find my final answer using the function operation, which is multiplying here. So I'm going to take 13 times 49, right, because it was F of 4 times G of 3, and getting 637. On to part F. Here we're doing division. We're dividing G of negative 1 divided by F of 5. So I have to evaluate G of negative 1 first. That's 2 times negative 1 plus 1 squared. Again, making sure you're plugging it into the proper function. Sometimes we get used to doing f first and then we just do f first instead of looking at what actually came first. In this case it was g. So I'll start by multiplying 2 times -1, getting -2. -2 plus 1 is a -1 overall. Negative times a negative will end up +1. Now f of 5, I'll have 5 squared minus 3. 5 times 5 is 25. Minus 3 will give me 22. Then overall, doing that division, g of -1 was 1. F of 5 was 22. I can't simplify that any further. Alright, part G here. Now remember, f times g of 2 is the same thing as f of 2 times g of 2. We're just plugging in 2 into function f and then multiplying it with plugging in 2 into g. So I need to find f of 2, which would be 2 squared minus 3. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. G of 2, I have to do 2 times 2 plus 1 and then square it. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So overall, I need to take f of 2, which I got 1, times g of 2, which was 25, and I end up with 1 times anything is itself. So 25 overall. And the last one here, h. So g divided by f of -2, same thing, or sorry, -4, same thing as g of -4 divided by f of -4. Again, the order matters. Division is not commutative, so I have to do g divided by f. I can't flip-flop that. Alright, let's find g of -4. Going back to function g, 2 times a -4 plus 1, and then squaring it. So 2 times a -4 is -8. -8 plus 1 would be -7. And then squaring that, I get a +49 because it was inside the parentheses. Now f of -4, I have -4, I'm going to square it, and then subtract 3. Negative times negative makes +16, minus 3 gives me 13. And then making sure I write g of -4 on top, which was 49, and f of -4 on bottom, which was 13. Overall, I ended up with 49/13 that also cannot be simplified.